have an opportunity.
Thinking that, but
To be sorry.
Toward the beginning of the film, we see a couple bringing an old love seat into their loft. The young lady's name was Sophie. Sophie accomplished everything and she was going to revamp this sofa. Both were content with their wedded life and were going through a cheerful time on Earth. Their monetary condition was normal. Yet, the dad of Sophie's significant other was exceptionally rich as he was a financial specialist. He was a proprietor of a major organization. Welcome to Movieland. Subscribe for a piece of good luck and enjoy. Yet, because of some explanation, Sophie's significant other didn't live with his dad. All things considered, he was consuming a blissful time on Earth with Sophie. At some point, Sophie's significant other becomes acquainted with that his dad has passed on. He gave his property to his child, Sophie's all-significant other. He will run his dad's organization from here onward. Consequently, they leave their new way of life and step into the upgraded one. They resided in a little condo previously, however presently they have a wonderful colossal house. In any case, Sophie was very little content with this adjustment of her life. The fact that everything changed out of nowhere makes it peculiar. Be that as it may, they acknowledge the situation as they need to spend their lives like this. Sophie fires 2 workers from the house on the absolute first day. Since they used to do the work without anyone else and they weren't all accustomed to it. Sophie's significant other attempts to clarify for her that she shouldn't have done this. She shouldn't have terminated those workers. As this is a major house, you will not have the option to work alone like previously. Will require someone for help. Will require somebody. Sophie says that I am not dependent on this. We ought to go about our responsibilities all alone. We ought to spend our lives as per our will. This change impacted Sophie's significant other's life also. He needed to deal with the entire organization as every one of the obligations was on his shoulders now. He takes pressure examining everything. Sophie was additionally incapable of dealing with all the work. Sophie's significant other tells this to a young lady in his organization. He says that I have an answer for this issue. A researcher was in his organization and his dad likewise worked in the organization. He made human-like robots. Nobody could figure that these are robots or people. These robots accomplish practically everything as people do. Since Sophie's better half required an individual who accomplished practically everything. He carries Sophie to his organization. He requests that she pick any robot among every one of the robots. Seeing every one of the robots, Sophie is likewise left bewildered. They seem to be people. They choose to keep a robot with them. The name of that robot was Henry. The maker of these robots guarantees Sophie and his better half that these robots won't hurt you. They are so great and valuable. To demonstrate this, he requests that Henry lick Sophie's significant other's shoes. It implies they will convey each request to people whether it's positive or negative. It was a highlight to be seen, yet they brought Henry home. Henry showed great execution in his work and he accomplished practically everything isolated. It helped them a great deal. At the point when Sophie's significant other conversed with her, he used to pleasantly answer. Hence, Sophie's significant other enjoyed him a ton. Since Henry was great and at the very least a human to them. Sophie's significant other used to impart everything to him. From the start, Henry appeared to be odd to Sophie. Be that as it may, she began loving him with time. She used to invest her energy with Henry and read most loved books with him. Henry was additionally extremely content with them and became straightforward with him. He was intended to become cheerful if his proprietor was blissful. He was made to do his proprietor's requests and to fulfill him. From the beginning, Sophie and her better half were upset in their lives, yet they felt simple at this point. Then one day, Sophie gets some information about feelings, love, and human sentiments. He made sense of pleasantly what is love, feelings, or human sentiments and the contrast between them. Seeing this, Sophie's significant other disallows Henry to enjoy such discussions. Since you accomplish other functions admirably. After venturing into this life, Sophie's significant other got this much bustling that he was unable to give Sophie much time. Henry saw ordinarily that Sophie got connected to Henry and was content with him. He used to feel desirous regardless of realizing that Henry was certainly not a human but a robot. Yet at the same time, he began detesting Henry. He generally recollected the way that he is a robot, not a human. Sophie thought of him as a human as he had every one of the sentiments in him like people. She was truly intrigued by Henry because of this. In any case, Sophie's better half could do without this. He attempts to clarify for his better half that he is certainly not a human yet a robot. Try not to allow him to feel that he's a human since he'll act precisely as you treat him. On the off chance that they looked at Henry as a human, he'll begin considering himself a human. However, Sophie disagrees with her better half. Since Henry was wonderful like people, he went about his responsibilities impeccably and did no mix-ups as people do. One evening, Sophie hears some commotion. She goes to look at Henry in his place, however he isn't there. The entryway was open and Sophie saw that Henry was lying in the nursery. At the point when she goes close to him, she understands that he is dreaming. This thing was new and bizarre in the robots. Sophie's better half awakens him and they take him inside. The following day, they enlighten the researcher concerning this issue and Henry went to the nursery at noon. Thus that researcher comes to their home and looks at Henry. They let them know that it hasn't any shortcomings. This is a little blunder that is typical. This will not happen. You'll not encounter any protests. Sophie lets the researcher know that she saw him dreaming. Which researcher says that Henry has been living with you for numerous previous days. In this manner, he could have considered you and a few sentiments are created in him. You caused Henry to feel like a human, so he began seeing himself as a human. Hearing this, Sophie's significant other ends up being irate with his better half that everything happened as a result of you. You are dealing with him like a human. Subsequently, that mistake showed up and you'll think of him as a mechanical machine. He doesn't have sentiments. He'll do what we request that he do. In any case, Sophie didn't think like this about Henry and she won't ever. Both the couple become upset with one another. Along these lines, Sophie's better half requests that Henry avoid his significant other. You will not invest energy with her. You won't peruse books with her. Hearing this, Henry asks Sophie's better half, "Have I made any errors?" Sophie's better half says, "Don't contend with me. Simply follow the order." The following day, Henry tells everything Sophie, so she ends up being irate and goes out. Insightful Henry makes sense for Sophie's better half that the issues among you and your significant other aren't a direct result of me. This occurred in the wake of entering another life. They didn't remain near one another and they couldn't give time to one another. Along these lines, Sophie is drawn to Henry. She began preferring him despite realizing that he is certainly not a human. She continued to think about her. She longed for him. Henry was good to such an extent that Sophie's significant other additionally began enjoying him. He was likewise drawn to him. At some point, when Sophie isn't at home, Sophie's better half does exceptionally awful with Henry. Henry feels awful because of this. He doesn't tell this Sophie. He conceals it. Sophie's better half apologizes to her and requests that she return home. Be that as it may, Sophie began like Henry now. At the point when Sophie and Henry are together, Henry fosters a few human sentiments and admits that he cherishes her. Hearing this, Sophie gets anxious and frightened. Since he began acting precisely like people, she becomes consequently so apprehensive that she requests that Henry return to where he came from. Sophie lets her significant other know that Henry admitted that he adores her. Hearing this, Sophie's significant other feels forceful. He awakens Henry and slaps him. He switches off Henry. Then, at that point, he calls the researcher to take this robot back as they don't require it now. He has obliterated our lives. In any case, Henry had changed. He had recognized that they were going to annihilate him. He demands Sophie not to send him away as he is loving remaining here. Try not to obliterate me, sympathetic. I acknowledge my slip-up that I said wrong. I'm embarrassed about this. Don't have the foggiest idea when he began creating human feelings and he began loving Sophie. She lets Sophie know that her better half fouled up with him. Sophie feels extremely awful in the wake of hearing this. Both the couple admit that the two of them got drawn to Henry. They lament over it and they will before long dispose of this robot. They'll spend a decent and straightforward coexistence then, at that point. Then that scientist comes to bring Henry. Be that as it may, Henry wasn't following the order like previously. He says terrible words to the researcher and an enormous mystery is uncovered here. We saw from the beginning that Henry never seemed as though a robot yet seemed to be a human. Since as a matter of fact, he wasn't a robot but a human. The researcher was responsible for this as he calls himself a robot producer. This thing was begun by his dad. He did examinations to make humans great. He needed to plan with the goal that he does no mix-ups and submits to every one of the orders. This analysis wasn't finished on robots, however, it was being finished on alive individuals. They showed them numerous beneficial things. He continued to attempt to make people great. As he did with Henry. He began programming Henry when he was a youngster. He was instructed that he is a robot, not a human. However, was it conceivable to change somebody? At the point when he began living with Sophie and her better half, his humanistic feelings sprung up. Like his dreams and love for Sophie and so on. Sophie and her better half are drawn to Henry since he is a human. At the point the police discover this, they take each of the individuals from the organization. Individuals who were viewed as robots. At the point when that researcher sees his trial getting annihilated, he ends up being frantic and insane. He kills the cops that were coming there to kill him. He likewise attempts to kill Sophie and his better half, yet Henry safeguards them. He kills the researcher. In the end, we see that Henry turns out to be miserable and endeavors self-destruction. He left Sophie and her significant other for good. Then we are shown a scene from a couple of years after the fact. They named that child Henry. They always remembered Henry, however he turned into an eternity memory for them. They needed to keep Henry with them, so they named their child Henry. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.